I want to introduce our speakers for today. We have 4 industry experts that are with us to help talk today about what's next for the meetings and events industry. The first person on my list is Jennifer Attersall. Jennifer is the Director of Incentive Travel at Destination Canada. That is a tourism bureau that serves all of Canada. She's been with the business events team for a number of years and has an extensive background in meetings and events in the meetings and events industry in Canada. Our second panelist today is Chuck Salem. He's the CEO and co-owner of Unique Venues. Many of you will know Chuck from your experience either as a venue operator and as one of our clients, or as a planner that works with us and submits leads. Chuck has owned the company since 2018 and has been working for Unique Venues and with non-traditional meeting and event venues for more than 20 years. Next person on our list is Suki Janki. She's the connoisseur at the GLO Group. She is a veteran events professional with more than 20 years of marketing and meeting planning expertise. And she helps clients elevate their face-to-face experiences, including trade shows, user conferences, internal meetings, and retreats. She is also the VP of Communication for the MPI Arizona Sunbelt chapter. And then finally, our last person is also a meeting planner, Trina Sharp, CMP, CMM, and CED. Love all the letters after the name. She's the events manager at Point B. She is a seasoned event and trade show manager with more than 20 years of experience overseeing national and regional events, keen eye for detail and capacity to multitask. Trina is also the VP of Education for the Oregon chapter of Meeting Planners International. So again, for those of you that are part of MPI, a couple of leadership folks here that are helping us out today. So I want to say thank you to everyone, all of our panelists for joining us today. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and get us started here with our first question. Just a reminder to everyone out there, if you are an attendee and you'd like to ask a question, you can certainly go ahead and hit the Q&A button at the bottom of your Zoom screen, type in a question, and I'll be keeping an eye on those, and I'll find the right place to fit that question in. So if one of the panelists says something, you have a follow-up, or if you just have a question you really want to ask of the group, hit that Q&A button, and we will answer those as we go throughout today. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and get us started today. And after 2.5 years, I think it's great that we're finally having a webinar where we're talking about recovery. Because those of you that are Unique Venues webinar veterans know that we spend a lot of time during the pandemic about how are we going to continue to survive this. But we are climbing out of it. And each of our panelists today represents a specific segment of the meetings and events industry. We have tourism bureaus, event planning, and venue operations. So I want to ask each of our panelists, from your perspective, how is the recovery going? What are you hearing from the various clients that you work with and the industry associations that you belong to? So let me go ahead and start with Jennifer from Destination Canada. From a tourism bureau perspective, how's the recovery going?
Sure. Thanks, Joel, and thanks for having me today. I would definitely say that for us, we're seeing, because we're looking after association, corporate, and incentive, we have multiple buckets, and we see recovery is different in each one of those segments. But business is picking up. I mean, we're speaking with some of our partners, some of our clients, and the leads now are ahead of pace than they were pre-pandemic levels. We've had actually some of our partners, unfortunately, have to turn away some leads just because of supply chain shortages, labor shortages, et cetera. But they're coming in manic. And I just wanted to kind of give you a little bit of an overview in those 3 segments that we're seeing, just because that is our portfolio. So from our incentive side, incentives right now are they are manic, and there is a pent up demand to get these earners back out and having these reward programs. The UK right now, they're having a huge demand for incentive business. So we're seeing a lot of interest from the UK right now directly for Canada. Same with the US. They're dealing with postponements, but also new incentives that are on the books as well. We have incentive groups that are looking at booking for 2022 already, in the next 3 months, because the organizations need to reward and recognize their employees because they've been at home for the past couple of years now. But as for associations, the associations, what we're seeing in terms of a bit of a shift is the associations with an international focus. So the ones that meet outside of their regional or demographic area, geographical area, they're more open to sourcing for new business, and Canada has become a driver for some of them just to come over to North America. And then for corporates, Now the corporations, again, it depends on the different segments, whatever vertical they are in, because some are more resilient than others. But there definitely has been a pandemic influence, I'd say, for acceleration in online networks, as we're doing this webinar right now. So tech corporations are eager to meet, and they're already having their big corporate meetings because they want to share their ideas, their products, their services, their innovation. They want to meet with others that will buy, research, share their research, meet with networks, etc. So it really does depend on which segment you're looking at, because they're all rebounding in different ways.
Got it. Excellent. Thank you for that overview. And let's move next to a planner. So Suki, from a planner perspective, how is the recovery going?
Thanks, Joel, and thanks for having me. It's an honor. So for my clients, and I have clients in different sectors as well. Trade shows came back first. Associations really needed to get back to business, and in most cases they were doubling up because 2021 they had later dates, and now they're back to normal for 2022. I would say my clients saw probably 40% lower attendance in the shows that they were going to. It depends on the industry. But this year so far, we're probably only down about 20%. So there's growth there in attendance at trade shows. However, on the corporate side, it's a little bit more tentative coming back, especially for client and user events, because of the risk legally and just due diligence overall. A lot of folks aren't ready to send their people back out to user type events. So those are being pushed out to 2023 in the examples that I have. And in the nonprofit sector, again, they are eager to go back to get the revenue from those events. So we're seeing a comeback just more recently in the last 3 to 6 months in that sector.
Great. That's wonderful information. Let's switch over to our other planner, Trina. And Trina, from your perspective, how's the recovery going? And Trina, you need to take yourself off mute. Perfect.
There we go. Hello, everyone, and thanks, Joel. I would agree exactly what Suki said, and I'd add to it a little bit, depending on where, what geographical area you are in, can, make the speed or the recovery from the COVID a lot faster. For instance, Arizona, you wouldn't probably know that it happened. Oregon, we're still seeing about, like Suki said, about 40% less attendance still. And besides that, it's a little frustrating. You want to jump back in and you want the attendance to be at least the same or higher, but I'm still finding out that we're still low. And that said, like I'm on the board of MPI Oregon, and we have our gala coming up next week, and we haven't had more than 30 people in attendance. However, next week we're at 60. So that was a huge jump. So I think the time is here to where the attendance will be increasing from here on out.
It's exciting to hear that, again, even though attendance is not quite caught back up with it, that it continues to grow, and we continue to see the optimism in the number of people that are attending meetings and events. So that's great. Thank you, Trina. And then finally, let's go to Chuck from the venue management side. What have we been hearing from clients, and what are we seeing in terms of how the recovery is going?
Great, thanks, Joel. So, I think everything that everybody has said, there's little pieces of it that I'm holding on to, because it really kind of parallels with what we're experiencing at unique venues. Our traffic for search by planners is exceeding 2019, which was a record-breaking year. So a lot of people are searching. Leads are equal to or surpassing on a daily basis what we had in 2019. Venues continue to struggle because, again, recognizing that we work with non-traditional venues where meetings and events aren't necessarily their primary focus. The events departments during COVID were in some cases gutted. And so we have venues that are working at 50% of their typical workforce. But again, there's this resurgence in people wanting to meet. And the truth of the matter is, whether it's 100 people or 200 people, you still need the same amount of people servicing that event, right? In most cases, with maybe the exception of service staff for meals and catering and things like that. But so, I think there's a great resurgence happening. And I think also what's happening, to speak from the perspective of the lower attendance, is that travel budgets still have not gotten back to the levels that they were pre-pandemic. They're slowly coming back, but maybe we're seeing the 20% or 40% drop in attendance for people who are able to or not able to travel because it hasn't yet been approved, because they themselves are recovering financially from what happened in the past 2 years. And I think the final thing that I would say is that I see and feel strongly that most people are feeling the confidence now. There's been this kind of like, there's been periods of hesitation. And as month by month goes by, that I'm seeing less hesitation from people. But I've noticed people are doing one of two things. From a marketing standpoint and trying to get their venues out there, they're either diving into the pool and saying, bring it, we're ready, or they're sitting on the side of the pool waiting and watching to see what's happening in the industry. I mean, it's just, people are taking a different approach to it. Some people are a little bit skittish to get moving. So
Thank you for that, Chuck. And again, thank you to everyone for kind of giving a quick update on what you're seeing as the events industry recovers. We've got a lot of questions that are coming in, especially from Joan. Thank you again, Joan, for always being one of our active participants that's out there. And I know a couple of our panelists are typing some responses. So if you do want to look in on the Q&A and see what's been asked and answered, again, hit that Q&A button and go to the answered tab, and you can see the ones that have already done that. I know Trina's responding to Joan right now about the precautions. We're going to talk about precautions a little bit later in the webinar as well. We'll get to your first question, Joan, here in just a little bit. But what I do want to do is I want to transition a little bit then to one of the things I know everyone's interested in, both our venue operators and the planners that are out there, is let's talk leads just a little bit. So what are you seeing in terms of leads? Again, a couple people you talked about in your intros, but what are the industries, or what are the meeting segments that have come back more quickly or that are coming back? And how far out are people booking events right now? Because again, I think we hear some conflicting information sometimes at unique venues about how far out are planners really booking things. So let's start with one of our planners. Let's go to Trina and talk about, in terms of meetings and events that are being booked, how much are you doing? What does that compare to beginning to 2019? And how far out are you planning events, given some of the uncertainty that's still going on out there?
I would say first, comparing to 2019, we're not quite back where we were. However, if you're talking retreats and getaways, I am noticing that suppliers, hotels, other venues, they are booking up quicker than ever. So right now, the event planners that work for Point B are in discussion with our board, saying we need to book for 2023. Otherwise, we're not going to get the selections that we want. And definitely, I can tell the other side of the universe, the supplier end, is going a lot quicker than my company is at this time. So, but I'm happy to see that the business is going.
Excellent, great. So you're starting to adopt a longer term strategy because things are getting full and busy, and again, that's good news. That's what we want to hear. Suki, what about? Oh, go ahead.
Sorry, I was going to say, even for smaller type events, again, you're looking, which I know we're going to talk about later, but specific types of venues, like unique venues, and that's a little different too. But then again, you got to book ahead 6 months to a year, I think, as well.
Excellent. All right, Suki, what about you? Comparison from your perspective as a planner.
Yeah, well, I love the word Jennifer used earlier, and it was manic. It's different for, and to Trina's point as well, it's different for every sector and every location and what people are looking for. For the larger events, we're booking, 2 years out as best as possible, but for some of my clients, they're only getting approval for certain locations and for certain sets of clients. And we are scrambling to help them last minute to find those unique venues. And we're finding that the demand is so high on that side that now I'm telling my clients, no, we can't plan it within your 2 to 3 month window. You need to give us 6 to 12 months at least, or else we aren't going to be able to set you up for success. So it is a very manic industry. I love that word because it feels like we're on a constant roller coaster, whether it's about the region you're going into, the sector of the industry you're going into. But it's a very competitive marketplace out there right now on the supplier side. So I am trying to teach my clients to go as far out as possible. But venues have that demand so they can kind of hold out for something better. So it's a little tough as a planner right now.
Interesting. Again, I think it's encouraging to venue operators that are thinking, should I really be aggressive at booking that far out? I think the answer is yes. It's time for you to be able to do that. Chuck, again, you touched on this a little bit, but digging a little bit deeper on what we're hearing about leads and how far out things are happening and that sort of thing.
Well, it's interesting because not everybody on this panel knows this, but we hold roundtables with our venue clients. And in our most recent venue roundtable, we were having a discussion, and what they were saying is the booking timelines have been so short, and we simply can't accommodate them on such a tight timeline, either because we're full or there's some kind of scheduling conflict, facilities aren't available. And so people are running into that. Another thing, though, that we're noticing as we process leads, and there are days where it's hundreds of leads that we are processing and distributing. It's so nice to say that because during the pandemic, it was like 10 leads a day. It is literally hundreds of leads a day we're sending out right now. And we're finding, again, that it's starting to pick up for people to submit leads for further out, for 2024 even. So I think people are starting to get more comfortable. Again, it's like there's this hesitancy, and I think only time is going to tell how well we keep moving forward. I can tell you the one thing that people are saying, I don't mean to open up Pandora's box here, but I think everybody thought that it was all going to be about virtual meetings and hybrid meetings when we were coming back, and our venues are saying, no, we are trying to sell them a hybrid meeting and nobody wants it. Everybody's like, no. They're saying one of two things. They're saying, we don't want a hybrid. The planner doesn't want a hybrid meeting because they rely on the revenue from the registration to because they're nonprofit or whatever. And they're saying, we are giving that option. We're recording it, but we're not going to have a live hybrid event. And it's tough for some of these venues because they invested a lot of money into a hybrid system to be able to accommodate what they thought was going to be the trend. And I don't know if the planners on here are experiencing that same thing, but people are like, we just want to meet in person. We just want to be together. So
yep. Excellent. And then Jennifer, lastly, from a tourism bureau standpoint, how are you seeing leads coming back and what kinds of activities are you seeing?
Well, I just wanted to touch on what Suki had said earlier, and what we're seeing and what we're hearing now too is there is this huge competitive market right now of securing venues, securing destinations, because all of the postponed events now need to move into new dates. Hotels are at capacity, they're oversold, destinations are at capacity. Corporations are wanting, the agencies or the planners to source new business, but also deal with postponed business. And venues and hotels are releasing old business because they're not signing the contract and another piece of business has come through. So it's a circus right now. It's chaotic. But again, back to the point is they are sourcing, they are rebooking. And what's interesting is back at the start of the pandemic, there was a lot of these reports and surveys of which industry do you think or segment is going to bounce back first. And funnily enough, back in 2020, they said incentives was actually going to be the last to recover because there's no time to, we're not going to meet in person. We're not, there's all of these different restrictions. And incentive has actually jumped the gun from associations to corporate because they are now actively sourcing, booking, going on these trips. Incentive programs are actually happening. So it's interesting to see over the past 2.5 years how, the predictions have slowly changed based on demand and supply and demand within the segments as well.
Yep. Excellent. Well, again, thank you everyone for the insights on what we can see. Again, it sounds like it's a very busy time, and both planners and venues need to be paying attention to the opportunities that are out there and facilitating the quick and expeditious booking of meetings and events in whatever time window, whether it's short range or, again, farther out now that as people are gaining more confidence to be able to do that. I am going to launch the first poll really quick. Just presenters, be ready. It's going to pop on your screen and you can clear it away. But for attendees, this one is for venue operators. So if you are a venue operator, we have 3 questions for you today, just to get a little information about what we've been talking about. We want to hear your thoughts on what you think is going on. So that's going to launch right now. And I'll leave that open for a few minutes. And so again, if you can jump in there if you're a venue operator and go ahead and answer those questions, we would appreciate it. So Chuck touched on the kind of the next topic a little bit and talked a little bit about how we are hearing that hybrid and virtual is maybe not going to be as solid as we all kind of, I admit, I was one of those people that really believed hybrid and virtual were here to stay. But on our roundtable, as Chuck pointed out, we're hearing that maybe that's not the case. And so I'd love to hear from Trina and Suki and Jennifer, what are you seeing or hearing? I mean, let's talk about, is hybrid and virtual still very much in play, or are people really trying to move away from that and get back to all in-person, face-to-face events? So do I have someone that wants to jump in first on this one? What are you thinking about hybrid and virtual? Give me a wave of a hand or something, or just come on. Jennifer.
I can start. I think hybrid is here to stay. I do. I think there will be a component. I think 100% virtual is gone, but there is a component of hybrid. And the reason why I say that is there's certain associations that can amplify their reach and have a larger audience with that hybrid model. There's certain associations that professional-based associations like nurses, doctors, academia type associations, they're not meeting as much and they're not traveling because their workload currently is too much. They don't have the capacity to travel. So they are tuning into these hybrid model meetings. However, you look at trade-based associations like companies and industry, et cetera, they need to meet because they need to sell, they need to procure, and there's new innovations. And there's a need to meet and sell in person. Whereas then you've got incentives. There is no virtual or hybrid component now of incentives because nobody wants to be rewarded on a screen. There's something more powerful about being able to touch, feel, and smell and experience versus seeing it on screen. So it really, again, depends on the segment that you're looking at, but I do think that it is here to stay.
Okay, and I've got a follow-up, but we'll come back around to that. Trina, you came off mic, so what are your thoughts about hybrid and virtual?
I totally agree with Jennifer. I think hybrid's here to stay. I agree the incentive type trips that you plan, of course, everyone will show up in person, but those events now have more of an indoor-outdoor atmosphere. People are less threatened by that. And also the fact that people have learned to work from home and companies are starting to promote working from home and the space isn't needed. Those folks that don't live close, it gives them an opportunity to really interact. That said, the cost of doing a hybrid meeting is just crazy. So we have invested in owls for all of our geos. So we bring our own that has the audio and camera and use those and have saved, several $1,000s. So anyway, I believe it's here to stay for quite a while. No one can forecast the future, but other than that, I think hybrid's going to be here for at least a long while.
And it sounds like you're looking for places that will let you do some of your own technology to help minimize the cost of making that available to a wider audience.
Correct.
Yep. Chuck?
Well, and I can't, this might sound like a shameless plug for a lot of our venues, but a lot of our venues are in the business. We're in the business of educating students virtually, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of universities in our portfolio, and they have magnificent, incredible hybrid meeting, virtual meeting equipment built into their meeting and event spaces. That's unparalleled. Joan had asked in the Q&A, you know, are unique meeting and event venues more ready to and able to handle these than some of the more traditional? I can say unequivocally, yes, these venues are ready. They prepared for it. But it's interesting because I've got two people who've said they're here to stay, and we're hearing our venues saying people don't want to do it. So I think there's got to be, we got to figure this out. So I'd love to hear from some venues.
Yep. So any venues in chat, if you're seeing a different experience, go ahead and throw something out there and let us know what your experience has been. Suki, any thoughts on the hybrid and virtual question?
Well, I agree with all of my colleagues here. I think I understand the point of view from the venues, thinking it's not really going to be, you know, it's not what people want, but there are parts of it that I think our industry has to recognize are here to stay. And that's things like bringing in speakers virtually is something that we've learned is a huge cost savings. It gives you greater reach for the potential speakers you can have. And as Jennifer mentioned, for those who could not attend before in the healthcare industry and education industry, you know, it just was impossible to make some of those association conferences. Getting your CEUs virtually is now something that has to be there to stay, because you're increasing your registration, even though it's not as high as your in-person registration, you're increasing your amount of attendees through that reach. So I think it really just depends on what type of event is being held, but I do agree in most cases, hybrid is here to stay.
All right, so maybe I'm still right. Maybe it was all, it's gonna be that way for at least a while. Now, my follow-up though about hybrid was, because again, and Trina, you talked about the cost of it, and it is much more expensive to be able to do that. But I think it's all some of what we've heard sometimes as well is it's also hard for events to figure out how to price that component, right? Because you're not getting the same experience as if you're in person. You're getting a different experience. So how do you price that? Or are you worried about if you give people a hybrid option, they go, well, that's going to save me so much money. Why would I show up in person? So again, I don't know, Suki or Trina or Jennifer, if you've got any thoughts about, you know, how do you balance that? I want to make it accessible to a wider audience, which is great, but am I worried about pulling away from what's going to happen in person, which is expensive to have facilities and banquets and all of those other kinds of things? So do you have thoughts about how to balance that out? Again, anyone raise a hand or jump in, and what do you think about that balancing act of making it accessible, but keeping the in-person still a robust and affordable and something you can pay for event?
You know, Joel, I really think it depends on the goals and objectives of the event. You know, if it's an incentive or if it's, you know, a celebration, you need to be there in person. But if it's educational or if you want to increase your reach, you will pay the additional and then offset it with the additional attendees that you'll be able to get. Because education through online, whether it's virtual live or whether it's pre-recorded at your event, which still costs more, but then offering it on demand, is an additional revenue stream that you might not have. So I really think it depends on the objective of the event.
Okay, and Jennifer, you were going to jump in?
I was just going to say the exact same thing. It's
Perfect.
essentially, but we are all in the business events industry. So we want face-to-face to come back, and we need it to come back. And the economic impact to our destinations and our venues and the economic sustainability of our destinations rely heavily on bringing these face-to-face meetings. And to Suki's point, if you need to be there, you'll be there. So yeah.
Perfect. All right. Let me check in really quickly on questions from the audience to see if there's a couple that we can check off the list really quick. Caitlin has agreed that bringing in speakers remotely is good, mostly for executive conferences, and that doing recordings and accessing them later is great to make them available to a wider audience. Emily is letting us know every event they've hosted since last September has had a virtual component. Even those that said everyone would be in person, obviously they're last minute, so they're always prepared to be able to do it. So again, it sounds like even when people are thinking we're going to be all in person, something comes up last minute and they realize, nope, we've still got to make this available either by recording it and putting it out after, or even last minute figuring out how do we broadcast a general session or something like that. So again, thank you to those venue folks that have, Chuck, go ahead.
There was a comment in the chat, and I'd love to hear from the planners because I'm not on the planner side. Of course, if you can't tell, I'm like, we went live events. So you can probably see I'm really promotional about that. And one person or two people made the comments that planners they work with find it challenging because they're almost having to plan one event, but they're doing like double planning for it because they have to plan both the live event in the virtual event. Do you find that it really takes a lot of extra effort to have to plan a virtual event, or do you find that the venues have it down generally?
I'll take this one. I think it does add quite a bit extra work. One of the reasons is because our company wants the people that are attending virtually to feel good, and they're not getting the in-person food and beverage and the happy hour right after the meeting. So we've decided now that we have to we feel we should give them gift cards so that they can order food, Grubhub, DoorDash, or whatever. So adding that in, and then last minute people canceling, going, I'm not going to be online. Here's my DoorDash card. Here's my Grubhub card. And then another person going, I can't attend in person. Oh, ship your card to so-and-so. It has caused a lot of extra work for me. And I think one of the points I should bring up is that maybe we should get rid of the rewards for the people that are choosing hybrid because they know they get a free meal or some money out of it, so.
Great.
Well, from my perspective, Joel, I can tell you, so during the pandemic, I was working for a nonprofit that all of their signature events had to go virtual. So if you are an in-person only type planner and you weren't on the tech side of things at all, it is a huge learning curve. I was lucky that I had some good technical experience working on the trade show side that gave me the tool belt to increase my skills, because really during the pandemic, you became a technical producer and you had a whole other skill set and a whole lot of virtual assets that you had to compile and put together. It was so much more work than you can even imagine, because not only are you worrying about reg and pricing, but you're also dealing with now like pre-recorded assets, live assets, having to have the bandwidth, having to have certain types of suppliers you didn't have to have before. I mean, it was a celebratory learning tool. Let me just say that. So now we all have that in our tool belt, which is great. I'm just going to take a positive spin on that. Okay. So I have become a television producer.
Yep, no, and I couldn't agree more, because having run, all these webinars, but also 2 virtual conferences for unique venues. And I did, those of you that have been around know I did Arizona Girl State. Again, a connection to my past, but I did help them run week-long conferences for 2 years in a row. And I can tell you, they just met on campus this last week in person again, and I must have gotten calls every other day from them saying, oh, will you please come back and help us, because it was so nice when there was a technical producer that did everything with bringing in video assets and making all that, and now that they're back in face-to-face, you're like, oh, this is a lot of work again. So and when you're doing both events, when you're doing in person, it's really 2 different skill sets, and you've got to have the right people that can balance both of those things. So all right. Well, hey, I want to jump on to the next topic, which is talking a little bit about health and safety measures, because again, we are definitely transitioning away from such a focus on that. But the pandemic has definitely encouraged a lot of innovation in new approaches to public health and safety for attendees that are going to meetings and events. So what are some of the best practices that you've seen emerge during the pandemic that you think, again, have some longevity or should stick around, just because they're new best practices that were probably better than what we were doing before the pandemic? Jennifer, do you want to start with that one? What are you seeing from a public health safety standpoint that are best practices that we've learned on?
I think this question would be more for my planner friends on the panel to answer, but as an attendee that's attended a number of trade shows, I mean, health and safety protocols now are here to stay, and they're, and this is our new normal, and it's great. I love seeing hand sanitizers on the trade show floor, and I actually get quite frustrated if they're empty or if I don't see hand sanitizers readily available when I'm at conferences. I also love seeing how people are more in tune and respectful of their health towards others. So you have a sore throat or a slight cough, you think twice about attending a meeting or a conference, just in case. Whereas prior to the pandemic, if you would have people coughing and blowing their noses and breathing on you, and it wasn't okay, but it was just normal. They had a cold. That doesn't happen nowadays. You have a runny nose, you check yourself before you even go. So as an attendee, I do appreciate that. But I think in terms of best practices, I'll leave it with Suki and Trina to answer from a planner perspective.
Great. Meeting planners, which one wants to jump in first? Call on Suki. There you go.
Trina raised her hand. You go to her.
You
I want to hear
right
what
when
she
she
says
raised her hand.
first, because it's all over the place. You go,
All
Trina.
right. Go ahead, Trina.
Okay. Our company has pretty strict protocols for travel. If it involves flights, we cover the cost for all the tests. We mail them to their home, each person's individual home. They test before they get on their flight. And then they test the morning again before the first full day of meetings. That said, it's worked in certain circumstances, and in another circumstance, 85% of them got COVID. It just takes one person, whether you're at the restaurant or whatever. It doesn't have to be our group. It could be somebody in an elevator. The other normal events we have bags full of hand sanitizer, like Jennifer said. We always have a box of masks available, because there are certain people in our company that want to wear it indoor, outdoor, whatever. We also have a gathering recommendation sheet that we send out ahead of time or include in our invitations, and what to expect. And then that leads into also, I don't know if this is the appropriate question for this, but the venues, to look at their, check out their HVAC system. How tall are their ceilings? Is there indoor outdoor space? Do the windows open? Is there a hybrid option for this venue? And then also checking out the contract terms again, of maybe more flexibility and cancellation or moving to a different date. So those are things my company has done.
You're still very focused on the public health and safety concerns of the attendees that are going to your meetings and events.
Yes.
Okay, great. Suki?
Well, as I mentioned, my answer is I'm going to use that word again. Thank you, Jennifer. Very manic. So, I have seen so many different types of, precautions being taken in different industries and for different associations. Some would like a pre-attestation before you can even get your badge, online and in person, that you have been vaccinated before you're let on the show floor, before you get your badge. In other cases, they'll say that, masks are required in a convention center. New Orleans, this has just happened this year. And then you go, and this industry is not an industry that wears masks. They are invincible. These are big guys, and not one single soul wore a mask the entire show. So, and then, of course, then, as you mentioned, looking at venues, I have had a party for, with drinking and food and no mask with one of my clients, where I was so thankful that all of the windows opened and I was able to get the Chicago lake air flowing through that event, hoping that it wasn't a super spreader, because it was at the height of a variant. So you've got your variant spikes that are bringing things up and down. You've got your different companies that have different travel regulations, and then you have associations with their own rules, but then may or may not actually, enforce them when it comes to it. So it is all over the place.
Yeah.
Great.
And it's interesting because, you know, I ran a poll for the venue operators, and I didn't share the results because we weren't going to keep taking up real estate time and that with people. I think venue operators are more quickly accelerating away from being worried about as many, you know, public health safety kinds of issues, then maybe it sounds like meeting planners are at this point in time. And so I think it's something, again, I will share the results of the polls with everybody. So all of you attendees, you'll get an email with me with the results so you can see. What I'm hearing here right now is a little bit of disparity between what a couple of meeting planners that are experts today are saying about wanting to still be focused on these things, and venues that might be saying, oh, I'm so glad that we can finally not worry about some of this stuff anymore. I don't think we're quite there all the way yet. So Chuck, I don't know if you had any thoughts on this one at all that you wanted to share.
As I don't really know from the planner's perspective, but all I can tell you is I went to my first industry event and there were 4,500 people there. And it was in a state that has signs up at the swimming pools that say, notice getting in the swimming pool may cause you to get this disease because of whatever. And it was like no precautions whatsoever, no masks required, I flew an airplane to get there. The flight attendants weren't wearing masks. They weren't even wearing gloves anymore. So it's like so hard because you could take all the precautions you want, but at least the event I was, people were just like, whatever, just go. Incidentally, I came home 2 days later and tested positive for COVID. But anyway, despite being double vaxxed and double boosted, I just think we're, you know, there's a lot of people, and this is not a statement saying this is good or bad. There are a lot of people who are just done. There are a lot of people who are saying, how many people do you hear say, we're all going to get it. We're all going to get it. We're going to get it eventually. And so, you know, it's hard to be that only person like me wearing a mask on the airplane. Like I was wearing a mask on the airplane. Nobody was wearing a mask on the airplane. Every seat was taken. It was challenging.
Yeah. Yeah, it is a little bit weird to be back in some of these spaces and not have the masks and the social distancing and the reduced meeting space, you know, sets and things like that as we all start to adapt to the.
I think the point I'm trying to make is I feel bad for venues and planners who are spending lots of dollars, lots of time, and being very conscientious. But that event they're in or that venue they're in is just one component of what they're going to experience over the 3 or 4 days that they're there. And as much as you think you're protecting people, they're going to walk out of there and something could happen. So,
yeah. All
Joel,
right.
can I just
Yes.
make a quick comment? Because I'm
Yeah.
looking at the comments in the chat, and I
Yes.
just want to have a blanket statement of, you know, meeting professionals who are going on site with multiple clients all over the country. Protect yourself. That's what I do. I mean, when I'm working registration and I'm having to ask people what their names are for, you know, 400 folks that have been drinking and out, you know, partying, I protect myself. And that's really, you know, you have to respect your clients' wishes and what their attendees do and don't want to do. But for holy jeez, please protect yourself. Because we have to be on the front line. This is our living and we need to protect ourselves so that we can continue to work. Everybody can, you know, it's free will unless you're in, you know, a city that has ordinances or a venue that's actually, you know, enforcing something. But most cases that is not the case. So just protect yourself and your families. That's all you can do.
Be okay with being that one person in a room of 100 that's still wearing a mask, because at least you're taking care of yourself. And if your staff, I mean, again, I appreciate that comment so much, Suki, because you're right. This is our livelihood and we have to be out there, and that means we have to do everything you can to keep people safe. So I'm gonna, for the planners out there, I'm gonna launch your poll. So know that it's coming live right now. And again, if you are a meeting planner, please go ahead and take a few minutes and answer the 3 questions that we have for you there. I want to jump then to, and this is a great, I think, time to do it, especially given some of the comments I'm seeing in the chat as well, is, so what did we learn from our experience going through the pandemic? We've talked a little bit about this in a couple different ways, but has the meetings and events industry been fundamentally changed in any way, good or bad? And if so, how? So I will just kind of throw that one out there and see if there's anyone wants to start. What have we learned from this, and what's going to be different? Like Jennifer said new normal before, are there things in our new normal that we should all just be used to saying, this is now how it's going to probably work for the long run, on the good or the bad side of it? Anyone want to start? Or while you're thinking, like, I can share an example, because anytime I've been to a hotel as I've been traveling the last 6 months, only one has provided me housekeeping service during my stay, and the rest of them all have signs saying we're not going to clean your room, to respectful for safety and public health and all that kind of stuff. And I checked into a hotel today and asked, are you going to be, servicing? No, we're not servicing the room. I said, do you think you're going to go back to servicing rooms? And it was the sales manager, because I was meeting with her as well, and she said, no, I don't think we are. Like, I think we're having so many issues with staffing, and just, I think generally people have not reacted badly to the idea that the room's not getting towels changed, the beds. So again, I think that's one, I don't know if that's good or bad. I think people would look at it if it's bad, if they're still paying the same rates, but not getting the same service. By the same token, I actually am okay no one's coming into my room every day. I can just kind of unpack, spread out, not worry about cleaning up before I leave for the conference for the day. And if I'm there for 2 or 3 days, I mean, I don't change my towels at home every day. So what's really the difference? And so again, are there things like that people can talk? Jennifer just came off mute, so I'll let you jump in, Jennifer.
I was just going to say another component of your example, which is great for our industry, is tying you into the sustainability factor too. Not having somebody come in and washing your sheets and changing your bed linen and your towels. I mean, that is used to be a trend, like sustainability and having that within your program used to be a trend. It's now becoming an everyday new normal that you need to have some sort of sustainability component within these meetings, or so I think that's a great example on two fronts. I also just wanted to share, I think how it's also changed is it's made everybody personally more aware of balance, work-life family balance, kids, dogs, everyone's in the background, and we've all become so much more flexible and accommodating and just more empathetic to life in general. And I think we're going to see a shift in the meetings industry, because I mean, for example, I was just at a conference last month, and it was there was a young mother there who brought her child to the conference and was conducting appointments with her child. And the argument was, if I spent this whole time at home with my family, now you want me to go and take time away from my family, I'm going to bring my family with me. So I think little things like that will start to change, where you'll start to see corporations and associations incorporating maybe daycare or childcare services as part of conferences, so that people can bring their families and not having to sacrifice that personal time with them as well. So
great, that's a great example. And again, I think we're all getting used to that, as even if you've got a speaker or someone coming, like today, I mean, I'm doing this remotely and I'm not in my environment. And again, I appreciate everyone's patience as we got going this morning, because we're just kind of gotten used to the fact that not everything is always textbook perfect when we're doing some of these alternative ways of connecting and meeting with one another, and everyone's getting okay with that. So Trina or Suki, any thoughts about, is the meeting industry changed in any way from the pandemic, or what do you see for the longer term?
I mean, I think working from home was an added benefit that a lot of companies are now, I think, going to stick with, or at least 2 days in the office, having less people together. I also think personal hygiene going forward is going to be much better. Otherwise, I mean, Jennifer pretty much said it all, but those are two things that I thought were kind of pro-COVID era.
Okay, great. Suki.
Well, there has been a lot of turnover in our industry and a lot of loss of talent. And, it's right now I have a huge appreciation for going into any hotel venue that actually has staffed up with good talent, not just bodies in a room, but like actual good talent. So these days I have a huge appreciation when things go off smoothly and flawlessly than I did before. So the thank you is much bigger, because there is such a shortage of labor, and it just especially talented labor. So my long-term relationships with trusted partners are so much more valuable to me than I ever realized. And having a flawless event or very few mistakes or things that go badly is also a huge, thank goodness it doesn't happen as often as it used to. So huge appreciation for everybody in this industry who has stayed and who can staff up and help us, have these great meetings and great experiences.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I think we've all learned to appreciate one another more, especially, in the past, you didn't give it a second thought when someone went the extra mile. And during the pandemic, it was really highlighted those people that were willing to go the extra mile and help make things happen. And if we can hold on to that feeling and that gratitude throughout and really recognize those people, I think that makes us stronger as an industry, because then those people that are that way will continue to rise up, and others will see them as role models, and hopefully we can make that be the norm for all the people involved in the industry that are out there. Chuck, any thoughts from your end about, has anything fundamentally changed?
I've been trying to think about from our perspective what has changed. And, we have a very different niche, right? So, a lot of people that worked in our venues got seconded or got sent over to another department to work and left their jobs. And I spent 2 years, year and a half listening to people calling me crying because their venue was closing or because they lost their job. And, there's a lot. And, I sit and I listen to hearing about people from working from home. Well, our venue operators can't work from home. They got to be there. They've got to be on site. So I'm all about being in the office when you can be in the office. Because the other thing I've heard of, friends I know who work in Washington, D.C., they start restaurants to support all of the workers who pour into the city each and every day, who no longer pour into the city each and every day. They don't. So it's kind of funny, because I think one of the things that we need to balance a little bit more on is whether it's just comfortable for us to be at home or whether it's a better option for us to be at home. And because there are people, everybody that stays at home, there's a negative impact on somebody else. There's somebody who's relying on your business at lunchtime who has served you for 20 years, and now they're going to lose their business. So, so I think we need some balance a little bit. And I think that's one of the things that happened a little bit. So I encourage everybody out there, if you work from home, take a day and go have lunch and go support one of the businesses that's around where your office is at, because they need you bad.
That's a great point, Chuck, to really think about the entire ecosystem of meetings and events. And again, even if hybrid's here to stay, that's great. But again, there's a lot of other ancillary things that are beyond meetings, events, whether it's restaurants or gas stations or whatever it is that's out there that still are in their own wave of recovery and trying to get back to whatever a new normal is going to look like. And Chuck, you look like you had one more thought.
Yeah, and be careful not today. I got an away message from someone who said, "I'm sorry, I'm working remotely today and may not be able to get back to you, or maybe I don't have all of the access to the information I may need," or something. Like, I would not tell anybody that. I don't think you want to make the case for working remotely by saying, "I might not be able to help you because I'm working remotely today." So I think you want to be careful about how you present that too.
Exactly. So we're getting close to the end of time, and I know some people may have to drop off. So I'm going to launch the session evaluation. So again, if you could take just a minute and answer 3 questions and tell us how we did today, we would really appreciate it. So that is coming your way right now. Again, panelists, you can set that to the side. And while we do that and you finish up, and again, if you have to drop off, please do so. We always like to end these things with a crystal ball kind of question. And today's question is one that we asked literally about exactly 1 year ago. And so I'll be interested to hear from our panelists what they think. The question simply is, because we've talked a lot about getting to normal or a new normal, whatever it looks like, when will the meetings and events industry be back to normal. We're on our way. Clearly, we've talked a lot about positives in the recovery and things are going well, but we're not there yet, and it's going to go on for a bit longer. So each of you, what do you think? When can we say the meetings events industry will be back to normal and doing business with number of events, number of attendees, number of opportunities, all those kinds of things, maybe, staffing levels where they need, when are we going to be back to normal in the industry? What's your estimate? Again, I'll look for someone to wave a hand that wants to be the first one to predict in the crystal ball. Chuck will go.
I predict that, and what I'm defining as normal is normal numbers of events, normal numbers of attendees, normal amounts of revenue for the venues and for the event registrations. And so my prediction is the end of 2024.
Okay. So
I think we still have 2 years before it's completely, the dust is settled.
Okay. And anyway, if any of our attendees want to throw your projections in chat, feel free. Tell us when you think we get back to normal. Jennifer, you had raised your hand.
I hate saying the new normal, but I do think that we are in the new normal now. And on Chuck's point, restrictions are lifting. Airlines are busier than they've ever been. Hotels are sold out. Leads are coming in manically, say manically again, Suki. But we're still dealing with labor shortages and supply chain shortages and talent. So we're almost there. I would say in 2023, Q3, Q4 2023.
Perfect.
I agree with Jennifer. My prediction was 2023, just because I'm planning out in 2023, 24, and I'm seeing the high level of competitive bids, and it's very difficult to get into some of the places you want to get into already for those times. And you've all said it here today that, especially with venues, there are a lot of leads coming in. So I think that it is going to be 2023, whether it'll be normal or not because of the labor shortage or pending any new, upticks and different types of variants and what may happen. That's my guess.
All right, Trina, you get the last word.
All right, and I've been back and forth in my mind, not sure how to respond to that. I'm hoping we're not going into a recession. I don't want to bring that up at the last moment. But if we do that, then things are going to change again. And I'm hoping that COVID is less of a factor going forward. However, new things keep popping up. So I really feel like it's almost unknown. But I would like to say 2023 as positive thinking.
Yep. Excellent. And we asked both planners and we asked people to throw it in chat. So I'll pull some of that and I'll kind of put that in the summary emails that goes out to everyone. Well, I just want to thank all four of you for participating today. We have done a lot of programming throughout the pandemic and really want this to be one of the last times that we talk, COVID and pandemic. I don't know if we're going to be able to fully pull that off yet because it is going to stick around for a bit longer and there are still things that are out there. And again, I think as we learned today that, from the meeting planner perspective, there's still an expectation that this is being taken seriously and that there's preventive measures out there and venues are going to keep, pulling through and doing the things to work with planners and make sure that people are safe as possible. But the great news that we've heard from everyone is things are busy. The leads are active. It is manic out there. You got to be on your game if you're wanting to get stuff booked in the shorter term, and you really need to be thinking about booking in the longer term. And venues need to be working with event planners. Again, don't put a I'm working remotely and I can't help you today message out there. Respond to that meeting planner right away. Send them a quote. Give them some information and take advantage of the mania while it's out there. We talked a lot about this being a tsunami of bookings and rebookings that would happen, and the tsunami's still rolling. And at some point, we all know it will subside. And so this is your opportunity. So again, all four of you, Jennifer, Suki, Trina, and Chuck, thank you for being our experts today. We appreciate it. For all of you that attended, we hope you enjoyed yourself. You've got the last 10 seconds here to be able to fill out the session evaluation. We appreciate your feedback. And we will host another one of these in September. So be on the lookout for the topic and the expert panel presenters, probably in about a month and a half or so when we announce the next expert panel. Everyone have a wonderful day. Keep taking care of customers, clients, and planners out there. And we look forward to seeing you on a future Unique Venues webinar. Take care, everyone. All the presenters, you can't see them, but they're all waving bye-bye at the moment. So again, thank you for being here today, and we'll see you in the future.